recording right now, since we've already done the welcome and the thank you, and we will get straight into the content of our presentation tonight. So I first wanted to start off with the trust of the library board. And so I'm going to open this up to all of you. There's that question there at the top. What would you say is the trust of the library board? So take a few minutes here and think about it, and then unmute and share with me some of your thoughts, please.
To make sure that the library director has absolutely everything he wants.
Excellent, excellent. I'm sure everybody agrees with that, right? Even that that bonus trip to the Bahamas, right? Right, Harold?
Well, I haven't thought of that yet.
No. You know, I sat in a hearing at the state capitol of one of the committees one time, and they were hearing a bill about libraries and about regional library systems. And they were talking about the fact that regional library systems didn't have members that were voted for. And they said, well, isn't that kind of letting the fox guard the chicken coop? And the person that they were talking to was one of the other regional library directors. And he said, well, I don't think so, because they're not going to want to pay higher taxes for the regional or anything like that. And they said, well, wouldn't they vote to give you a helicopter if you wanted a helicopter? We all laughed. And to think that that legislator from wherever he was thought that a library board would give their director a helicopter is just beyond me. So, kind of crazy. But thank you, Harold. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Are we being shy here? Yeah, I see a head shaking up and down. Come on. The trust of the library board. What do you think? Come on, Nancy. Look like you were moving towards the microphone there. You gonna say something? No. Nobody? I can't imagine all of you are normally this quiet. No thought.
I would assume that serving the community would probably be kind of at the top of that sort of list.
Okay, all right, very good. Serving the community and giving the library director whatever she wants. Anyone else?
That would be serving the community, by the way.
Okay, well, let's jump into it, and we'll see where we go. And if as we go you have questions or comments, or you do think of something, please don't hesitate to jump in and share it. Okay. So as you may have noticed, or may have heard me say before, the word trust is in trustee, correct? T-R-S-T, and then there's the double E. All trustees are entrusted with public funds for the maintenance and function of a local library. Likewise, each library board has as its trust the establishment of policy for the maintenance and function of the public library. So here are a few examples of what the trust of the public library board is. And some of these will duplicate if you were in the session last night. But I think this will be good for all those that were there last night, because this is a different way of looking at some of those things I shared. So to provide adequate materials to meet the library's service roles. Maintain the library as an information center for the community. Provide adequate funding for the library. Okay, I'm going to stop there real quick. What do you think these things mean? Because these are deep. These three statements I read to you are pretty deep. What do you think they mean there?
Service to the community.
Okay, absolutely. So you're focusing on your community whenever you're providing information. Absolutely. Okay, what else?
I think a lot of it has to do, George, with the upkeep of the library as far as resources go.
Okay.
Just making sure that you're, I guess, keeping up with the times.
Okay, excellent. Anyone else? Okay, well, let's kind of flesh one or two of these out a little bit more. Maintain the library as an information center for the community. What is that going to mean for communities? Do you think it's going to be the same for each? I, for one, think it would be different for each community because each community is different in the way that it needs information or the needs of the community can affect that center. A community information center could be a place where people get together and talk, have a cup of coffee, right? It could be where the kids come after school, not to be babysat, but to participate in activities, right? So you can look at each and every one of these things from a different perspective. I like to highlight the adequate funding for the library because we need to constantly be advocating to local officials, state officials, to community members in order to continue to receive taxes, but also to continue to receive gifts and donations. And so there's a lot that can be said about each and every one of these items. But if you want to look at it broadly, it's exactly what was said. It's serving your community and it's maintaining that library. Absolutely.
Hey, George.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things, not just the resources as far as books go, but like you said, we are a meeting place for our community as well. One of the things that we do is we have someone from Angel Care come in once a month and give a talk to all of our elderly people. We have a group of ladies that come in and they cut apart these grocery bags, these plastic grocery bags, and they knit sleeping mats for homeless people. And we have a group of those, of probably 12 to 14 of them every single week. They come on in and do that. So what we did was we invested in a bunch of comfortable chairs for them to sit in.
Yeah. Absolutely. There are even libraries that have gone as far as to have, this is going to sound weird, but you can actually check out a person at the library and take some time for an hour just to talk to them. Sometimes they even do it as, say, a history project where you could check out somebody who lived through the Korean War or lived through the Vietnam War or lived during the time of the Cold War and could share situations and circumstances that they dealt with. So yeah, there's a lot of things that really come into play there. Thank you, Harold, for your comment. Anybody else? Okay. Next, we have encourage and authorize planning to meet community needs. We know communities evolve all the time, or change, and so we're always needing to plan for those changes and to help support our community. Encourage ongoing investment in the library through gifts, endowments, foundations, and trusts. Measure and evaluate the effectiveness of library programs and services. Employ and nurture a qualified library director. Provide competitive salaries, optimum work conditions, and ongoing training and development for staff. Encourage the participation of trustees and library staff in professional organizations and activities. Ensure services are delivered by an appropriately sized staff that are trained and working under appropriate and current job descriptions. Provide adequate facilities for housing library materials and offering library activities. Maintain access to library services and information to all citizens. Encourage and enable cooperation with other community organizations, agencies, and institutions. Ensure that services and activities of the library do not unnecessarily duplicate similar services and activities in the library district, and if they do, encourage cooperation. Ensure the library participates in interlibrary resource sharing. Okay, so those are just a few that I've heard over the years, few that people have come up with. And I like this list. Of course, it's not exhaustive, but there's a lot of good information there. Anyone care to share any other thoughts about the trust of the library board? And you'll notice on the slide that I have the big 3 plus. The big 3 to me for library boards is the plan, the budget, and the policy. But this definitely goes beyond those 3 items when we talk about the trust of the library board, where we're talking about advocacy, and we're taking care of the librarian, and we're making sure that the library staff have a good environment to work in. And we're talking about things as intellectual freedom, things like service to all, things along that line. So there's a lot to this trust that the library board holds for their community. Okay, any other comments before we move on to our next topic? Okay, so my question now, and hopefully all of you will have a chance to answer here, and if you need to, there is a chat option as well, so you can plug in your answer in chat if you don't feel like putting your picture up on the screen and talking. But my next question is do all of you have a trustee orientation program? And don't feel bad if your answer is no, I'm just curious.
George, we do. It is admittedly a fairly kind of loose orientation though, but we'll usually get them the trustee packets and you know, a general overview of kind of what we do.
Okay, all right. Uh-oh, am I gonna have to start calling on people?
George, this is Crystal from Hoxie.
Hey, it's Crystal, yes.
We do not.
Okay.
At least they did. I was the only new member this year, and they didn't do anything with me, but they did give me this big old packet. And so and then obviously they had, you know, wanted us to attend as many of these training or, you know, as we could, but
Sure.
as far as doing something in Hoxie, we haven't done it.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And I see that we have a text from, it looks like Lenora, and they say they do not have an orientation program. They hand out packets to our new trustees. Very good.
And I think for Wakini, we don't really have a formal orientation program, but Mary has gotten extra copies of the manual that you have to give to the new board members and answers any questions that they need, encourages these trainings. And then, and that's definitely an improvement, because when I came on 8 years ago or 7 years ago, nothing. And some of the stuff they talked about at board meetings was just great to me. And trying to pick it up, I felt really intimidated. So
Sure,
I
sure.
think this helps. These trainings help a lot too.
Good, good. Okay. Oberlin, how about you? Do you have, shake your head yes or no? Yes? Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll add one more thing. Mary
Okay.
Deaver has put all our policies up on our website too.
Yes. All
Because
right.
I just read through those today. I knew she told us that she had done that, but we've been working hard on that the last few years, and she's got them all on the website now. So we can refer to them, or the public can.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that.
There's been another comment in the chat too, George.
Oh, okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Leah Marie. By the way, Leah Marie, one of our wonderful summer helpers, is on with us this evening to help out. Keep me in line here, so she'll correct me if I need it. More family. Okay. Doesn't have a formal training, but they do explain what they do as a board. Excellent. Thank you, Les. All right. Anyone else? Okay. Well, hopefully tonight I will show you that a trustee orientation program doesn't need to be complicated to be successful. And hopefully I can also share with you the reasoning behind having one and preparing people to serve on the library board. So we will jump right in here. For new trustees to succeed, they definitely need to feel comfortable, and they need to gain that self-confidence that we heard about there, as well as to feel like they're involved, because most people that do volunteer work need to have some sort of fulfillment, right? Or elsewise they're not going to volunteer. But I think that a lot of this can be easily done by offering a trustee orientation. So let's start off here. Orientation should start right after the trustee is appointed to the library board. So as soon as you find out that the mayor's appointed somebody, we should start planning on getting that orientation done. Trustee orientation should include an informal meeting with the library director to discuss how the library is organized, governed, funded, and how funds are budgeted, how the library operates day to day, how it's structured to serve the community, and how that library is linked to other resources like the state library, the regional library system, the school district, things of that nature, and how it's linked to other libraries and institutions, as I just said, and related to the library board of trustees or the library board itself. So it's that relationship that we talked about last night. Those are a lot of things that can be discussed by the library director. And really, these things can be discussed in 15 minutes. I'm sure it'd be helpful for new library trustees to get a tour of the library, meet some of the staff, walk through the stacks if they've never been in the library before, because I know that happens too sometimes. We get trustees that have never stepped foot in the library before. And so all of those things can happen at this quick 15, 20-minute meeting with the library director. And most times you'll probably see that you guys will actually enjoy spending time together, and it'll take you'll take more time. So definitely that should be a part of it. And then the other piece should be that during orientation, they should meet with a member of the library board, and specifically an officer. Hopefully that officer would be the library director or the library chair or president. But if that is not possible, then any other officer is capable of doing it. And at that meeting, they would discuss some simple things like location and schedule for the meetings, responsibilities and expectations for the person as a trustee, goals, plans, and progress on those goals and plans and accomplishments. And the cool thing about that is, now who doesn't want to have a friend when they go to a meeting, right? Cool thing is once they've met the trustee and the library director, now they've got two friends or two people that they know at that meeting. So you're going to be less hesitant to go. You're going to be less hesitant to participate because now already two people are known to you. And you've begun to get that information that you need to succeed by knowing how the library operates, how it's funded, where those funds are being expended and how they're being used, what plans there are set for the library and things of that nature. And as has already been mentioned, it's important that the new trustees receive that packet of information. And yes, it's arduous, as Crystal showed us, to get through. It's good bedtime reading, right? So you fall right to sleep, because it's going to include a directory of people that are on the board and their contact information. It's going to contain a list of staff and their job descriptions. It's going to have bylaws, past minutes, financial reports, budget, policies, strategic plans, annual reports. I mean, all kinds of good, wonderful information that I'm sure all of us look forward to reading as we're on library boards. But a lot of that is good information for us to have and at least gain a familiarity with it as we review it. And it is also important, not just for new members, but for all members, to have an understanding of the function of the library board compared with the library director, the library's legal basis for existing, how the finances work and how to read the financial reports, how the physical facility functions, basically, the lights, the sewage, where shutoffs are, things of that nature. They should have an understanding of the policies, the collection itself, how it grows and shrinks in that rhythm of the library, what services are provided, the history of the library, relationship with the community, any local ordinances and contracts that pertain to the library, and in some degree, a little bit of knowledge of the state and federal laws regarding libraries. And of course, that advocacy piece, knowing what's going on in the city in regards to the library, knowing what's going on statewide in legislation with the library. Any questions or thoughts? Do all of you think this is something you could do? Just take and invite the trustee before they go to their first meeting to the library, have an informal sit down out in the lobby area, if you have one. If you're a one-person library, back in the stack somewhere, just chat about the library, get to know them, befriend them, so that then they have that person when they go to that meeting that they can look forward to actually seeing and recognizing and knowing and can sit next to, right, until they make other friends on the board.
You know, George, this is Harold. My library board has been around a lot longer than I have. In fact, I'm the newbie here, and that's why I'm sitting in on these meetings. Because there's a couple of them that are coming to the end of their term, and I'm going to have new trustees eventually here. And so I just kind of needed some input as to where we needed to go with that.
Right.
So yeah, so I really appreciate this, and the things that you've been saying are just really are really hitting home.
Good, good. And I think if we all make this effort to do something like this, and it's only, what, once a year, sometimes not even that, depending on how all of the different terms fall. But I think if we make that effort, people will be more comfortable at meetings. You'll be more apt to keep them, and they'll want to be more involved then. And so I just think it would definitely benefit us if we can work through this process and create just a little bit of a program for new trustees. And also, because of all of you being here tonight, you realize that it's not just when you become a new trustee that you keep that learning going throughout. It's not just when you're the new one. You want to make sure that you're continuing to keep up on what your duties are, what's going on in the library world. And so you can provide input and ideas when it comes to planning and developing services for your community, and sharing with the board those things that you find out that your community needs so that it can be applied as well. Because I know if you go to the grocery store and you eat at your restaurant and you gossip and you hear what's going on in town, and so you know what's going on in your community and what you need. The creative part is trying to figure out how to fit that into the library. Okay, any questions? Any comments or thoughts? Okay. We'll now move to our final section here, and that is the board meeting. Okay, real quick, I'm going to see all those that have their camera on at least. How many of you have sat through a meeting, not at the library necessarily, I don't want to say that, but have you sat through a meeting that was just terrible and you wish that you could crawl out as quickly as possible because it was going nowhere and you felt like it was a worthless effort on every front? If you've been in one of those, raise your hand, because I have. Yeah, okay. I've led one of those too, a couple of those too, unfortunately. All right. So tonight, hopefully we can talk about board meetings and see if we can't make them a lot more effective and efficient and not become that terrible meeting that we have all sat through. So first off, let's take a minute, and if you want to close your eyes, go ahead. If you don't, that's fine. But think about the best meeting that you ever attended or participated in. And if you haven't, then think about what you think the best meeting would look like. Okay, so take a second and think about that. Let it percolate here. Okay, so we're thinking about it. Maybe there was a lot of participation. People were kept on target with the subjects and things. Okay, what in your mind then makes that meeting the best that you've ever been a part of? Or if you're conceiving of one in your mind, what made it the best in your mind?
Making suggestions. Most of the ones that are on our board pretty much speak up when they have something to say, and that is good so that we all get a determination of where we should go with whatever subject we're on.
Excellent. So conversation, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and the chat here, looks like we got one. One that stays on topic. Okay.
Well, I'll agree with that one, George.
Okay, I'll put a,
We're a very small community, and everybody knows everything about everybody, and sometimes we get into a lot more things than
just the meeting itself. So we have to kind of reel them back in and try to finish the meeting before we go into our gossip sessions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Chasing those rabbits that take us into gossiping. Okay, we've got another one in the chat. It looks like everyone participating in the discussion. Good. Keep meetings on task. Allow time for visiting after the meeting is over. Excellent. Board members asking questions. Yes, absolutely. Explaining the new technology where we're adding. Very interactive. Very good. Excellent. I'm noticing a theme here, right? A lot of discussion, keeping on task. Some of my board members think I'm crazy, but I love it when my board members talk at our meetings. Because one, if I feel like, okay, they're justifying what I'm doing just by talking about it and asking me questions, but then they also then can give me great feedback. And that feedback then turns into other ideas or takes us in another direction that we weren't even thinking about going in. And so I definitely agree with that. I love that when we have comments. I don't like rubber stamping boards. Any other thoughts? I would probably assume that everybody here thinks about the same, and they don't want a meeting to last longer than an hour, I'd imagine. You get into that 2-hour marathon and, oh man, that gets painful. All right, so let's get into some of these best practices then. To have the best meeting, participants need to know when and where the meeting will take place, of course. So library boards should have a set day of the month, time, location for regular board meetings. Just a quick note about meetings. Special meetings may be called by the president or the chair, whichever you have, or upon written request by a majority of the board. During special meetings, the board may only discuss the business for which the meeting was called. To conduct business at any meeting, a quorum must be present. And yesterday we established that a quorum is 5 for a city library here in Northwest, because we have the 7 members plus the mayor. All meetings should have an agenda, and a library board meeting is definitely not an exception. The chair president should prepare an agenda with input from other board members and the library director. Agendas should be built around tasks that need to be done. Priority should be given to important tasks. The agenda should be sent several days in advance of the meeting, along with written reports and minutes. Okay, so that agenda piece helps us stay on topic, as well as then having the chair with a cattle prod, right? So if you start going off topic, you get zapped or something. But definitely following that agenda. And I'm just going to run through run through a pattern of an agenda. So we would normally have a roll call, approval of the previous meeting minutes, maybe the approval of the agenda itself with additions if needed, discussion about correspondence and communications. Then we usually have a director's report, financial report, any committee reports. We discuss unfinished or old business. We get into our new business, and then we adjourn. And as we talked last night, one thing I'm trying to get a lot more of the boards and directors to focus on during directors' reports is that idea of working towards those goals that we've set in our plan. That way it's always in the forefront, and making it an agenda item itself on the board agenda. One useful tool in streamlining meeting agendas is a consent agenda. The consent agenda ties all routine reports, minutes, and other non-controversial items into one agenda item for approval. So you would start like normal, got roll call. Then you'd have your consent agenda, which would have board meeting minutes, treasurer's report, director's report. And so those all could be approved at the same time instead of each individual item. So you don't have to get a second and sit there and have discussion and that nobody discusses. And then you can move on to the discussion items. The consent agenda form should first be recommended and not adopted by the board. And reports on the consent agenda must be sent out in advance of the meeting. And so the point of this is to have all the board members read those reports, look at those financials, check out the minutes ahead of time. And if there are no issues or need for discussion, then you can come into that meeting and you can approve the consent agenda, and all that stuff automatically gets approved with one agenda item. Now, if there's an issue with that, say you're looking at the treasurer's report and the numbers look strange, You can always say that you want to pull then the treasurer's report off of that consent agenda, move it down to the regular discussion items, and then you can have the discussion about that after you've approved the other 2 items or 3 items or whatever you have in the consent agenda. So it's not like it being in the consent agenda means that you never talk about it. It can be moved. This is something that I actually forgot about, and now after reading up on it again in the last week, I'm definitely going to try and incorporate into my own meetings with the system executive committee, because I think this would save us a lot of time as well. Any questions, comments about that consent agenda or about agendas in general? Hopefully everybody uses one. If not, please use one. Okay. And definitely look into using the consent agenda. If you need any assistance in setting it up, let me know. I would definitely love to come down and help out with that. Okay, so it is important for all members to attend the meetings. You can have in your bylaws a policy that says people that miss so many meetings will be asked to resign, but that's all you can really do. That's the only power the board really has, is to ask somebody to resign. There's only one way that somebody can be removed from a board, and that is if they do something illegal. Library directors should always attend board meetings in an advisory capacity. Of course, there are exceptions. If you're going to fire that library director, well, you probably don't want them there. So you would probably go into executive session and tell them to leave or something like that. Or if you wanted to buy Harold his motorcycle, then you probably wouldn't want him there. So you could talk about the gift you want to give him or whatever. Being really crazy here with that. But definitely they should be there. They're the ones who are in the trenches with the staff and battling every day, and they can come in and give you a lot of good feedback and input on what's going on in the library. Trustees should be prepared before attending by reviewing the agenda, reports, and minutes. The chair or president should follow meeting rules and the agenda, should move discussion along, keep everyone on track, encourage all members to participate, clarify any issues, and be fair to all members. Meetings should start on time, last the maximum, and I put this in there, 1 hour, because I think if you go beyond that, you're in trouble. Things can be tabled until next meeting. Members should try to be on time and stay until the end of the meeting. All board members should be civil and considerate, and I would almost go to the point where I would say you need to have your own board policy on this, outlining appropriate behavior during board meetings. There's no reason that board members should ever personally insult others or get into arguments to the point where it completely shuts down discussion. That is not appropriate for library board meetings and should never, ever be allowed. We should always be civil and considerate and definitely attentive. Now that doesn't mean that you can't be assertive. There's a difference there. You can be assertive, but you can also be respectful when you're doing it. No one person should ever dominate the meeting either. And if there is somebody that's constantly dominating, library chairs can use as a tool in that to prevent that by setting time limits on the amount of time that people can speak about specific topics. That sometimes can help in preventing that dominating personality. The last item that I want to mention here about meetings, and I think this is a very important one, and I think we all lose sight of this sometimes, but members can vote against items, right? If you have an issue come up and the vote is, 5-2, that's fine. Don't think of that as a failure. That is the society we live in. As long as you have a majority of people that vote for that item, then it's good. Don't ever be afraid of voting against something if that's how you feel. I had a board member who voted against things quite often, and I never took it as an insult, and neither did other board members, because that is how this thing's supposed to operate. And we can all have disagreements about things, but in the end, if we're civil about it, we can move forward. Unanimous decisions are definitely not required. But there's one piece that I want to emphasize after that. Once the vote is over, the decision has been made, the board and all the board members need to be one voice in the public. Because once you have somebody out in the public saying, well, I voted against it because of this and this, and they're all worthless because then you're going to have a breakdown. The library's going to look bad. The library board's going to look bad. Everybody in that situation is going to look bad. So once a decision has been made after full and careful consideration and a vote, it is definitely important for the library board publicly to speak as one voice. Okay. Okay. And the last piece here is a piece about assignments. During meetings, when assignments are made, so let's say we have a goal and this board member wants to help with that goal. It's important that those assignments are made clearly so that individuals know what they're expected to do and when that assignment is expected to be completed. One thing that helps is to send minutes out right after the meeting, so any board member that is going to be doing something, those minutes kind of act as a reminder for them. And also it's good to have the chairperson or someone else on the board follow up with that individual about that assignment. The same goes with if an assignment is given to a board member or given to a library director. It's always great to follow up with that library director halfway through between months, halfway through between meetings, just to make sure that that assignment is being completed, and so that there can be some sort of a report at the next board meeting. So that is a definitely important that it helps just to be reminded and to be held accountable for things. Okay. That's all I have this evening. There is one other item that goes along with the meeting, and that is the Kansas Open Meetings Act. Do all of you know about the Kansas Open Meetings Act? No? Okay, I get a head shake, no. Okay, yes, maybe. Okay, it's very important because this is the law that basically directs how meetings need to run in the state of Kansas. There are certain requirements, and most of those requirements deal with the executive session of a meeting. And so I want to go through real quick just a few of these things. So in order to go to executive session, which means it turns into a closed meeting then, it's not an open meeting at that time. And we're all under open meetings law, by the way, every one of us. An executive session is when a public body is permitted to discuss certain subjects in private. An executive session may only take place once an open meeting is convened. A motion must be made to enter into executive session. The complete motion and the resulting vote must be entered into the minutes. There are three parts to making this motion. One, a statement describing the subject to be discussed in executive session without revealing confidential information. And so for most of us, it'd be to discuss non-elected officials or personnel, sorry. The justification or reference to one of the permitted topics for executive session contained in comma, and time and place in which time the open meeting will resume. And you cannot take a vote in closed session. You would have to come out of come out of closed session into open session, or out of executive into open meeting to then have a vote on anything that you might have discussed in the executive session. Any questions about that? Okay. Just want to make sure everybody's aware of all that. I don't want anybody to get in trouble. All right. Now we'll open it up to questions. Anybody have any questions they'd like to ask? And it doesn't have to be about the topics that we talked about tonight. It can be about anything related to trustees. I'm not good with advice on love lives or anything like that. I'm pretty much just tied to library stuff. Boy, you're all just really quiet. Did I offend anybody by anything I said tonight? All right, well, that's good. I don't want to offend anybody. Okay, I'm going to stop recording.